It's in your pocket right now. You touched it over 2,600 times today. It knows where you've been, who you talked to, and what you want before you even want it. But here's what it isn't telling you. Your phone may be listening when you think it's off. It carries more bacteria than a toilet seat. And the radiation, the data harvesting, the physical damage, that's just warming up. I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 facts about your phone that'll terrify you. 25. Your phone has more computing power than all of NASA in 1969. The smartphone sitting in your pocket right now is roughly 100,000 times more powerful than the computers that put humans on the moon. Let that sink in for a second. The Apollo guidance computer, the machine that navigated astronauts through space and landed them safely on lunar soil, ran on just 74 kilobytes of memory. Your phone has millions of times more than that. Engineers in the 60s worked with slide rulers and sheer ingenuity to squeeze every last drop of performance out of hardware that would embarrass a modern calculator. They reached the moon with it. You're using your infinitely more powerful device to scroll memes and argue with strangers in comment sections. 24. Your phone is dirtier than a toilet seat. Here's something you probably didn't want to know before breakfast. Studies have found that the average smartphone carries 10 times more bacteria than a toilet seat. 10 times. Think about that the next time you reach for your phone first thing in the morning. The reason is pretty straightforward. Toilet seats get cleaned. Phones rarely do. And in the meantime, we take them absolutely everywhere. Bathrooms, hospitals, packed subway cars, and then set them face down on restaurant tables and press them directly against our cheeks during calls. Researchers have pulled some genuinely alarming things off phone screens. E. coli, staphylococcus, strains of antibiotic-resistant bacteria that have no business being anywhere near your face. And yet, here we are. You've probably touched your phone and then touched your face at least once in the last hour without even thinking twice about it. The toilet seat, for what it's worth, is statistically cleaner. 23. Your phone knows your location even when GPS is off. You turned off location services. You felt good about it. You figured, how was that? Yeah, it wasn't. Turning off the setting doesn't actually stop your phone from knowing where you are. Your device can triangulate your position using nearby cell towers, identify your location through Wi-Fi networks in the area, and pick up Bluetooth beacons embedded inside stores. All without touching GPS. All without your permission. In 2018, Google admitted that Android devices were tracking users' locations even after they had explicitly disabled location services. The toggle was essentially a decoration, a button that looked like it did something and didn't. Internal documents from phone manufacturers and app developers have shown this kind of data collection happening continuously in the background, regardless of what settings you think you've switched off. 22. Smartphones may be physically changing your brain. Your brain is physically changing to accommodate your phone, and not in a good way. Neuroscientists studying heavy smartphone users have found measurable differences in brain structure compared to people with lower phone dependency. A study published in the journal Addictive Behaviors found decreased gray matter volume in areas specifically associated with cognitive control. The part of your brain responsible for keeping impulses in check is quite literally shrinking. Here's what makes this genuinely unsettling. Smartphones have only been in our pockets for roughly 15 years. We're running a neurological experiment on an entire generation in real time, and we won't fully understand the results for decades. By then, rewiring will already be done. 21. More phones than people. There are more mobile phones on Earth than there are people. That's not a rounding error. Roughly 5 billion people currently own a mobile phone, but the average user has about 1.5 devices. A personal phone, a work phone, a spare, which pushes the total number of active mobile lines to somewhere around 7.5 billion. The global population sits below that number. Think about what that actually means. We've manufactured, distributed, and connected more phones than there are human beings to use them. Billions of people who lack access to clean water or reliable electricity have a mobile phone. In some developing nations, mobile connectivity arrived before running water did. There are people on this planet who have never owned a pair of shoes but are reachable by text. Let that one settle in for a second. 20. Your DNA code can be sold by sites. Spitting into a tube and mailing off your DNA to find out you're 12% Scandinavian sounds harmless enough. But buried in the terms of service you click through without reading is something worth paying attention to. When you send your genetic sample to a company like Ancestry.com, you retain technical ownership of your DNA. What you're giving away is the right to use the data derived from it. That's a meaningful distinction. Those companies can sell information extracted from your genome to third parties, pharmaceutical companies, research institutions, or anyone else willing to pay for access. You won't necessarily know who ends up with it, what they're studying, or how your genetic data fits into whatever they're building. Your DNA is the most personal information that exists. You put it in an envelope and mail it off for an Ancestry pie chart. 19. Smartphones emit radiation that may affect your body. The official position on smartphone radiation is that it's probably safe, which is a reassuring thing to say until you sit with the word probably for a moment. The World Health Organization classifies radio frequency electromagnetic fields as possibly carcinogenic to humans. That puts it in the same classification category as lead and DDT. Some studies have found measurable reductions in sperm quality in men who regularly keep phones in their front pockets. Others have identified potential links between long-term phone use and certain types of brain tumors, though the research remains contested and no definitive causal link has been established. What hasn't been established either way is what decades of holding a radiation-emitting device directly against your head actually does to the human body long-term. We simply haven't been doing it long enough to know. 18. Your phone tracks your sleep patterns without permission. You probably never signed up for sleep tracking, but your phone has been doing it anyway. The accelerometer inside your smartphone, the sensor that detects motion and orientation, is sensitive enough to figure out when you fall asleep, when you wake up, and roughly how well you slept, just from monitoring how you handle the device throughout the night. Movement patterns, how often you pick it up, how long it sits untouched. Your phone is reading all of it. Your operating system collects this data continuously. Depending on the apps you've installed and the terms you've agreed to without reading, that information may be passed along to third-party developers you've never heard of. You didn't explicitly consent to any of this, but buried somewhere in a terms of service agreement you scrolled past, you technically did. 17. The blue light from your screen damages your eyes. Every time you stare at your phone screen, it stares back, and it's doing more damage than you'd think. Smartphones emit high levels of blue light, and research has been piling up linking prolonged exposure to some genuinely concerning outcomes. A study published in Scientific Reports found that blue light can trigger toxic reactions in photoreceptor cells, very cells your eyes depend on to process vision. Once those cells are gone, they don't come back. Ophthalmologists are already seeing the early signs. Headaches, blurry vision, chronic dry eyes, what they're now calling digital eye strain, are showing up in patients at rates that didn't exist a generation ago. But the deeper concern is what we don't know yet. Blue light exposure at this scale is historically unprecedented. An entire generation is conducting an uncontrolled experiment on their own eyes, and the full results won't be in for decades. 16. Your deleted photos aren't really deleted. When you delete a photo from your phone, you probably feel like it's gone. It isn't. What actually happens is your device removes the pointer, the internal address that tells the system where to find the file. The image data itself stays exactly where it was, sitting quietly in your storage until something new happens to overwrite it, which may take a while. which may never happen at all. With the right forensics tools, those deleted files can be pulled back with relative ease. Law enforcement does this routinely. So do data recovery services. So potentially does anyone who gets a hold of your device. And if your phone syncs to the cloud, which most do by default, the situation gets murkier. Those photos may be sitting on company servers long after you've deleted them locally, governed by terms of service you didn't read and retention policies you never agreed to. 15. App developers can access more than you think. That permission prompt that pops up when you install a new app, the one you tap allow on without reading, is doing a lot less protecting than you think. When you grant an app access to your photos, you're not giving it permission to see the one photo you wanted to share. You're handing over every photo on your device. The same logic applies to your contacts, your messages, and most other data categories. It's all or nothing, and most people don't realize they're choosing all. But it gets worse. A 2019 study found that third-party apps were accessing sensitive user data, location history, contacts, call logs, even in cases where users had never granted explicit permission in the first place. The gaps in the system weren't edge cases. They were widespread. The permission screen exists to make you feel in control. Whether it actually gives you any is a different question entirely. 14. Your phone can be remotely activated as a surveillance device. The most effective surveillance device ever built isn't hidden in your ceiling or installed in your car. You bought it yourself, you pay a monthly plan for it, and you carry it everywhere you go. When Edward Snowden revealed the NSA's PRISM program in 2013, the world learned that intelligence agencies had been accessing user data directly from major tech companies on a scale most people hadn't imagined. But bulk data collection was just the visible part. Individual device access goes further. Court documents have confirmed that law enforcement agencies routinely use mobile extraction tools capable of pulling essentially everything off a smartphone. Messages, emails, deleted files, and data you believed was encrypted. Intelligence agencies have demonstrated the ability to remotely activate microphones and cameras without the user's knowledge. None of this is speculation. It's documented, legal in certain jurisdictions, and already happening. 13. Smartphone addiction is now recognized as a clinical condition. Here's a quick checklist. Do you use your phone longer than you intend to? Do you feel anxious when it's not within reach? Do you reach for it out of habit before you've even consciously decided to? If you answered yes to any of those, mental health professionals have a name for what you're describing. Problematic smartphone use isn't officially in the DSM-5 yet, but it's being increasingly treated as a genuine behavioral condition by researchers and clinicians. The symptom profile looks a lot like other recognized addictions: compulsive use, failed attempts to cut back, continued use despite clear negative consequences. Studies have linked heavy smartphone dependency to higher rates of depression, anxiety, and declining performance at work and school. Several countries have already opened rehabilitation centers dedicated specifically to smartphone addiction. The device was designed to be hard to put down. Turns out, for a lot of people, it's become impossible. 12. Your phone creates a permanent record of your life. No biographer in history has ever documented a life as thoroughly as your smartphone documents yours. Every location you've visited, every search you've run, every message you've sent and received, your phone logs all of it automatically, continuously, without being asked. Sync that to a cloud backup, and it'll live on a server somewhere indefinitely, governed by policies that can change without your knowledge. And that record has real consequences. Location data gets subpoenaed in criminal cases. Search histories surface in divorce proceedings. Communication patterns get sold to advertisers and analyzed by companies you've never directly interacted with. The information flows outward in ways most people never trace and never think to question. 11. Smartphones are designed to be addictive on purpose. The most unsettling thing about smartphone addiction isn't that it happened, it's that it was planned. Former engineers and designers from Google and Facebook have spoken openly about how apps are deliberately built to maximize the amount of time you spend on them. Variable reward schedules are baked into notification systems. Social validation loops keep you checking for likes. Artificial urgency keeps you from putting the device down. Asa Raskin, the man who invented Infinite Scroll, has compared the feature to behavioral cocaine. He said he didn't fully understand what he was building until after the damage was done. Tristan Harris, a former Google design ethicist, now runs an organization dedicated entirely to exposing how tech companies exploit human psychology for profit. These aren't outside critics. They're the people who built the thing. 10. Children's brains are especially vulnerable to smartphone effects. The average American child gets their first smartphone at 10. That's a developing brain, still years away from full maturity, handed one of the most psychologically engineered devices ever created. Research from the National Institutes of Health found that children spending more than 2 hours a day on screens scored measurably lower on cognitive tests than those who didn't. Separate studies have linked heavy childhood smartphone use to shorter attention spans, difficulty regulating emotions, and stunted social development, the kinds of foundational skills that are significantly harder to build later in life once the window for developing them has closed. The full picture won't be clear for another generation. The early results aren't encouraging. 9. Your typing patterns can identify you uniquely. You already know your fingerprint is unique. What you probably don't know is the way you type is just as distinctive, and a lot of apps are already using it to identify you. The speed at which you tap, the keystrokes, and the pressure you apply form what researchers call a keystroke dynamic signature. It's essentially a behavioral fingerprint, and studies have shown it can identify an individual with over 99% accuracy. Many apps and operating systems collect this data quietly in the background, which means that even if you're using a private browser, a VPN, or a fake account, the way your thumbs move across the keyboard can still give you away. Your identity follows you across devices and platforms in a way that no privacy setting can fully block. 8. Your phone knows things about you that you don't know about yourself. Your phone may know you're depressed before you do. Machine learning algorithms analyzing smartphone usage patterns have gotten remarkably good at reading between the lines of your daily behavior. A study found that sensor data alone could predict depression with 87% accuracy. Other research has shown that usage patterns can reveal personality traits, levels of anxiety, and even political leanings with unsettling reliability. The algorithm isn't guessing. It's pattern matching against millions of data points collected from people whose mental and emotional states were later confirmed. When your usage shifts in certain ways, the system notices. It knows when you're stressed. It knows when you're lonely. Often, it registers these states before you've consciously named them yourself. 7. The cobalt in your battery was likely mined by children. The battery keeping your phone alive almost certainly contains cobalt, and a significant portion of the world's cobalt supply comes from mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where children as young as 7 have been documented working in dangerous, unregulated conditions. This isn't a historical footnote. Investigations by journalists and human rights organizations have continued to surface evidence of child labor in these supply chains well into the present decade. The work is physically grueling, and the environments are hazardous, and the children doing it have no meaningful alternative. The device in your hand is a marvel of modern engineering. What went into building it is a harder story to tell. 6. E-waste from phones is creating toxic landscapes. So here's something nobody really talks about when a new phone drops and everyone rushes to upgrade. What happens to the old one? The average American swaps out their smartphones every 2 to 3 years, and the old device doesn't just vanish. A huge chunk of the world's electronic waste ends up shipped to developing countries, where workers tear these things apart by hand. No protective gear, no safety protocols. Just lead, mercury, and cadmium are absorbed into their bodies while they sort through what's left of your last upgrade. These are communities that had no part in producing their waste and no vote in receiving it. They're just on the receiving end of a cycle that plays out every time someone decides their current phone isn't good enough anymore. 5. Your phone's sensors can detect what you're typing on nearby keyboards. You probably don't think twice about setting your phone down next to your laptop while you work. Researchers think you should. Here's what they figured out. The accelerometer inside your phone is sensitive enough to pick up the vibrations produced by a nearby keyboard. And those vibrations are distinct enough that, with the right algorithm, they can be reconstructed into actual text. What you typed, potentially including passwords, private messages, and sensitive documents. Researchers have demonstrated this works, which means the attack vector exists. Whether it's being actively exploited is a harder question to answer, mostly because if it were happening, you'd have no way of knowing. 4. Your phone is ruining your work and play. And it's not staying contained to your health or your data. It's bleeding into your actual life. Psychologist David Sheffield at Staffordshire University surveyed smartphone users and found that 7% reported losing a job or relationship directly because of their phone use. Not because of anything they found on it, just the use itself, the distraction, the compulsion, the inability to put it down when it mattered. 1 in 14 people. A relationship or a career, gone. 3. Your phone may be counting down to planned obsolescence. You know that feeling when your phone starts slowing down right about the time a new model comes out? Turns out, that might not be a coincidence. Internal documents and class action lawsuits have revealed that smartphone manufacturers have deliberately pushed software updates that slow down older devices. Apple settled one of these lawsuits in 2020 for $500 million. Not an admission of guilt technically, but not exactly a great look either. The practice has a name: planned obsolescence. The idea that a product is engineered not just to function, but to stop functioning on a schedule that benefits the manufacturer more than the person who bought it. So your phone isn't just becoming outdated because technology moves fast. In some cases, it's actively being nudged toward the trash can by the same company that sold it to you. 2. You've already agreed to terms you would never consciously accept. Quick question. Did you read the terms of service when you set up your phone? Nobody did. And the companies writing them are counting on that. Researchers calculated that fully reading the privacy policies for every app on an average smartphone would take over 200 hours. So instead, most people scroll to the bottom and tap accept, which is exactly what they're designed to make you do. What you're actually agreeing to is a different story. Buried in that wall of text is binding arbitration, meaning you've waived your right to sue. There are permissions granting access to your data for unnamed third parties. There are provisions that would seem completely unreasonable if anyone bothered to explain them out loud in plain language. Nobody did, though. That's the point. 1. There may be no going back. Here's the part where you'd expect the list to end with some practical advice. Delete a few apps, adjust your privacy settings, and maybe take a digital detox weekend. And sure, you can do all of that. But the honest conclusion is a little harder to sit with. Smartphones went from luxury to utility to necessary in roughly 15 years. Banking, healthcare, employment, basic social connection. The infrastructure of modern life now assumes you have one. Opting out isn't really an option anymore. It's just a fantasy people entertain when they feel like things have gone too far. The phone won. That device in your pocket is the most powerful, most intimate, and potentially most dangerous object you own. It knows everything about you, and you know almost nothing about what it's really doing. I'm not saying throw your phone away. That ship has sailed for most of us. But maybe think twice before you hand it to a child, or keep it on your nightstand, or assume that settings actually protect your privacy. And speaking of phones, check out our next video, 25 things people did before cell phones you won't believe. It's a different kind of eye-opener. Hit that subscribe button and ring that bell, and I'll see you in the next one.